What I, the NBA has a coaching problem. And what I mean by that is the NBA has a problem with coaches. And at this point, why do teams even have coaches? I don't get it. I don't get it. I think you should have player development coaches. And that's it. Because coaches clearly don't matter to NBA teams anymore. Because all these coaches, let's take Monty Williams, for example, right? Monty Williams was a great coach for the Phoenix Suns and winded up signing a long-term deal, like a 5-year deal with the Detroit Pistons, and then goes to the Pistons and had the worst season in franchise history. It doesn't make any sense. So I frankly, I don't really know what the problem is because there's so many tiny problems that make up this big problem. And one of them is the fact that players have more power than coaches. That's just the bottom line, is that players have more power than coaches. And I think players understand this, and it has led to coaches basically being able to, I don't know exactly how I'm trying to say this, but so coaches don't get respect like they used to. I think back in the day, coaches used to be respected a lot more, and now it's not the case. You have a handful of coaches in the league that have respect, both by the team that they coach, and its players, and the league as a whole. There's very few. I think Steve Kerr is one of those coaches. I think Greg Popovich is one of those coaches. And that's honestly, those are the top two that come to mind. I don't really know who else. I think right now, Joe Mazzulla gets a ton of respect. He obviously just won a championship. But, I guess I'd throw Eric Spoelstra in that conversation as well. I think Eric Spoelstra is a really good coach and a well-respected coach. But it seems like for the majority of the other teams around the league, it doesn't matter. Ty Lue also should throw in that conversation. I think Ty Lue also gets respect from players. But so a lot of these guys are former players, and I think that's why they get respect. But even at that point, it's Darvin Ham is a former player, and I feel like he wasn't really getting respect. And I don't even know if I can really say respect, but he wasn't treated like a coach. It's almost like he was like a figurehead for the Lakers. And as soon as they were like, yeah, we have a problem, it's like, okay, let's just fire the coach. So I think that's another problem, is that the first person to be blamed all the time is the coach. Which is funny to me because I feel like coaches don't even have that much power in the NBA today, right? The biggest thing that a coach has during a game is being the one that gets to pull the trigger on if you're going to use a challenge or not. That's it. I feel like, sure, maybe you'll run a couple of plays, you'll run some schemes, but for the most part, you have your point guard out there, or you have your, LeBron James or primary ball handler or whatever out there. They're calling the plays, right? They're the extension of the coach. So you're the coaches are really important in practice and, for end of game situations. But again, if you have someone like LeBron James on your team, he's probably just going to be like, nah, f that. We're running this play. We're going to do this, right? And I don't think that's, LeBron being a controlling person. I think it's just LeBron's on the court. He knows what's going to work. He's been playing against the opponent the whole game. So it just seems people think that by firing a coach, it helps problems. And sometimes it does. But most of the time, I don't think the coach is making that much of a difference. Right? There's only so many great coaches out there that are going to be on the market that you can bring in after getting rid of your current coach. And most of the time it's just going to create more chaos because there's going to be a very, very like small difference in, you know, whether it's an improvement or a, you know, diminishing effect on your team, you know, in terms of a new hire. It's still creating more like stress for people because you got to get used to a new situation. You got to get used to a new coach. You got to get used to a new way that you're going to practice and stuff like that. It's just like it creates more chaos than it's worth. So if your coach really isn't doing that much, but he's not causing you to lose, why would you look to replace him? You know, just to put someone else in his place to be like, oh, well, maybe it'll work. Like, if you want to do that in the off season, by all means, like, go for it. But like mid-season, like, that's not going to work. Like, look at what the Bucks did. They, you know, fired their, you know, coach in, you know, Adrian Griffin, and Doc Rivers came in, and they got worse, right? And like they fired, you know, Adrian Griffin when they were like the 3rd seed in the East. And I just don't get it. It's like people look at a coach when their team isn't performing the way they want them to perform and think, okay, let's just fire him. And the other thing is like you're wasting so much money. Like Monty Williams got signed to I think like a record-breaking deal. And you know, I think he's still guaranteed that money. So you're losing like, you know, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 million dollars on, you know, these additional years that you had this guy signed to. And, you know, the Pistons were bad the year before too. They weren't this bad, but they were still bad. So what is the point? Like, why not just see if it's going to work rather than like throwing money at everything? And I get it. Like NBA teams are billion-dollar, you know, organizations at this point, but like, still, it's like millions of dollars. It isn't nothing to, you know, play with. So I don't know what the solution is. I just think, I've probably said this a million times now, but the NBA has a problem with patience, and that comes from owners, coaches, players, etc. Like, so many people within the league get so impatient so quickly. And like, think about like, what if you like broke up the, you know, the big 3 of the Miami Heat with LeBron, D Wade, and Bosh, you know, after they lost that, you know, first year against Dallas. Like why would you do that? And honestly, I think if they hadn't won the year after that, they might have honestly done it, because they're gonna be like, oh well, clearly this team doesn't work, right? Whereas like, why not let guys play out their contract, see what's happening? Like, I just think like sometimes it can take 4 years, 5 years, 6 years to really build chemistry and a good, like, you know, outline for how the team needs to operate. It doesn't matter how talented you are. If you don't have structure, you're not going to be as efficient as you possibly can. So I don't know, man. I just think like being a coach in the NBA is a scary job at this point, because you have no job security. You have absolutely no job security, right? But as long as your contract's guaranteed, I guess you have, you know, financial security. But it's just hard. It's hard to understand, like, how do you make an impact as a coach nowadays, right? Because even like, let's go to another example. If you look at Tom Thibodeau, the coach of the Knicks, right? Like, people look at him 2 different ways. They're like, oh, you're playing your players way too many minutes. This is why your team's so injured, yada, yada, yada. But the Knicks are the best that they've been in, I don't even know how long. Definitely the best they've been in my lifetime. And then you have other people that say, oh, well, you know, this is why Derrick Rose got injured, yada, yada, yada. And it's like, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. You know, Tibbs still coached that team after Derrick Rose got injured. So, you know, I just don't know. And I don't really know how owners are thinking, but like, the NBA has a problem with coaches right now. And I think the answer is patience. If the coach is bad for the locker room and he's bad for the environment, like, then yes, get rid of him. But if the coach vibes well with your players and he motivates your players, but he's not necessarily the most, you know, intelligent guy when it comes to the X's and O's, like, I think that's okay. Because coaches can play different roles. You know, it doesn't mean that he needs to be the one drawing up the plays for every single possession of the game. That's just not the reality. And players have so much more power, like I said. So a lot of the time, the coach, in order to gain that respect, needs to put trust in his players, almost to a fault, where he's letting them go out there and make wrong decisions during the regular season so that they learn and they don't make those mistakes in the playoffs. But that takes a very confident and secure coach in order to be like, you know what, like, you take the keys, you're running it, right? And we just don't have that. We just don't have that right now. So have patience. You know, success doesn't come overnight. Rome wasn't built in a day. You know, give these coaches a break, please.